And welcome to this week's IG Live. Today I'm honored to talk to author and illustrator Steph Littlebird. You probably know her for her work as an illustrator. She also does fine art, but she is the artist behind a number of award-winning books, including My Powerful Hair, which won the 2024 Carter G. Woodson Award. And also she has two other books that just won awards from the American Indian Library Association, and that's Fierce Aunties by Laurel Goodluck, who was on this program previously, so you can go back and look at that interview, and also Summer of the Bone Horses. But this is her debut as an author-illustrator, and if you are interested in this book, make sure you enter this week's giveaway, because you could win a copy of this book, and it ends tonight at midnight, so don't miss that. And thanks to all of you for joining us and for your support. It makes us able to bring these interviews to you. Hey, sorry.
No worries. Let me get my camera correct here.
I know it's a little strange. We always do it sideways, but it looks a lot better on YouTube than in the little vertical ones. How are you?
I am very well. Thank you so much for inviting me to chat with you.
Oh, I'm so excited when I saw this book because you have such a distinctive style. It's like, oh, I know exactly who that is because I recognize your work in other ones. And to get to talk to you about your debut book as an author also is very exciting. So maybe first you can introduce yourself to those that don't know you, and then tell us, what was your journey to deciding to work on children's books?
Oh my gosh. So, my name is Steph Littlebird, and I am an Indigenous artist. I work in the Pacific Northwest. My tribes are from essentially what is Portland, Oregon, the sort of surrounding area there. And so much of my work relates to my Indigenous identity and sort of, focuses on representing Indigenous culture. And but I have been a fine artist for a really long time and went to school for painting. And so I'm a trained painter who basically I started teaching myself digital tools like on Procreate probably right around when the pandemic started. And I was just sharing my sort of evolution as an artist on Instagram. And through that, I was discovered by what became my agent, my literary agent, and Kathleen Rushall, who is totally transformed my career. And so it was really amazing because up until that point, I basically just making one-off paintings, and then getting into the digital world, things really can take so many different forms. And so she reached out and said, we think your work would be great for children's books. And I was just like totally floored by that idea because I do come from I'm also I come from a town of like 500 people. I just could never have dreamed that I would be in this position to do these things. And so I just feel like so blessed, so lucky that someone just happened to find my work on Instagram, and basically, my career completely transformed through that. And so, yeah, I feel really blessed. I feel like my work is serving its highest purpose in children's books and getting to sort of impact the next generation. That's such a huge part of Indigenous community and culture anyway. And so it just sort of wraps very nicely into all the things that I do already.
So I'm fascinated by this. So you never had any thought that you would be working on children's books? I mean, obviously, like you said, you trained as an artist, as a painter, and it was just kind of by chance, almost, that someone found you.
Yeah, I was doing illustrations in digital for adults, and I still, much of my work on Instagram is, geared towards adults. And so I don't know, I just never envisioned it. I did take one illustration class when I was in art school because I really admired illustrators because they're very disciplined. And I realized when I took that class that I did not want to be an illustrator, or at least I thought I didn't want to be, because there's so much drawing involved. And I was a painter, and to me, drawing was like a means to an end. Like, you have to draw in order to paint. And so I had to sort of fall more in love with the idea of drawing more and just really strengthening my skills as an someone who has to represent anatomy and movement and all those things. And so it was a challenge in a way, but it was like a good one because I've become a better artist because of it. But yeah, I was like, when I took that illustration class in college, I was like, not for me, nope.
Yeah.
You know. And it was like, haha, the universe was like, yes, it is for you. So
I love that. So, and like you said, you still are creating your fine art or doing work more geared towards adults. So how do you, like, how's your approach different when, say, like you're working on a book versus doing your fine art? Do you have to kind of switch gears, or is it kind of a similar like, has that kind of influenced how you do your fine art or vice versa?
totally. I mean, more than like just the technical development, like
Mhm.
becoming a better drawer, because
Mhm.
drawing a book requires so many different skill sets, as just visually representing the world, but then communicating emotion, communicating um, these complexities that are kind of like hidden within a manuscript that might be more like metaphoric. And so there's a lot of challenges in that as a fine artist, I'm a political artist mostly. Like I do stuff that's not political, but a lot of my work is politically based. And so it's very much like hit you over the head, you know? And so children's books challenges me to be more nuanced in my approach and
Mhm.
have to like think of subtlety as a skill set, which I have never been a
Mhm.
subtle person. So it is its own unique challenge, and but
Right.
it's been so fun because yeah, as an adult I can be much more direct, and I can
Mhm.
use very like sometimes inflammatory language, things like that. Whereas when I'm working with kids, I really have to like have to be the super intentional and also think
Mhm.
about how their brains work, which is very different than an adult's brain because at the age that a picture book comes into their life, they don't even have like they're just developing their abilities for like literal thinking, let alone abstract thinking, and so you have to think about what in their world makes sense to them and try to draw those connections. So there are many values that run through all of my work, but they are very different audiences. And so it's fun because it makes my work better on both sides, and so each audience that I cater to sort of helps me cater to the other audience better as well.
Oh, that's so interesting. And by the way, for anybody watching, if you haven't seen Steph's work for adults, you really should go to her Instagram. You can find it all there on the website, which is the Instagram is Art Nerd Forever, right?
Hmm.
So you have to check it out because they're really great too. But like you say, it's different than what you do for kids. And I wanted to talk a little about your style. Like I said, as soon as I saw this book, like I knew who this was because you have like a very distinctive style. Oh, I think we lost it for a second. For anybody who's just joining us late, we're talking to Steph Littlebird. We're going to be talking about "You Are the Land," which is her new book that's just come out. This is her debut as an author illustrator. But what I was talking about is she has a very distinctive style that probably you can recognize if you've seen Fierce Aunties or My Powerful Hair. I mean, it's just so beautiful. Hopefully, she'll be back on with us in just a second. And if you are joining us late, don't worry. This is all going to be up on Instagram in just a minute. And then afterwards, of course, we'll have the whole thing on our YouTube channel. I just want to show you some interior pictures here. And maybe I'll go ahead and tell you a little bit about what the book's like. Well, hopefully she comes back on here. This is a book all about teaching. Okay, I think we just lost her. Hopefully she'll be back on. But this is a book all about a child's connection to the land. As she mentioned, she is an Indigenous artist. Hold on. Okay, let me try again getting her back. I think she's having some trouble rejoining. So hang on just for a second. Oh, good. Yay. I was afraid we might have to do something fancy to get you back on.
I know Instagram was like, it was letting me look at you, but it was not letting me
Mm.
like rejoin you, but I'm back. I'm so sorry.
Yay. No, no, that's great. I'm glad you figured it out. I was just talking a little bit about your book and how you do have this very recognizable style, which you said is kind of combined. Indigenous kind of traditional sensibilities, but also kind of modern contemporary artwork. So how did you develop this style? How would you describe it?
You know, I feel like I've always been influenced by indigenous style generally,
Mm-hmm.
and I come from a region where we have very strong indigenous style roots, like the Pacific Northwest. A lot of people are familiar with, totem pole styles, sort of what's called form line. And I come from a region that has its own very specific style that's called the Big River style, and it's sort of based on the very similar system as those other styles that people are more familiar with,
Mm-hmm.
but ours is regionally unique. And so I've grown up studying these styles, and they really have come to influence my work. Also, I should say that when I was in art school, I was a painter, but my secondary focus was in printmaking. And so
Mm-hmm.
I was like carving wood blocks and making prints of them. And so you can really see the wood block influence in there as well, I think, where it's like me taking out the black and leaving color behind is very much something that comes from like doing carving of wood, or what we call lino, which is like a almost like a big stamp. So yeah, I'm like, it very much is a reflection of the things I do in my painting and printmaking work. But like, it was a challenge to figure out when I started working in digital. I was like, I don't really like the way it looks because it is very flat looking. And when I started in children's books, there was a challenge from my editors to be like, you got to put more textures into this because little kids love texture. So the first thing they wanted me to do was like, use lines that have lots of rough edge to
I was
them.
just thinking about that with the waterfall or the kind of the cliff that you have there.
Yes,
Sorry,
and
go
it's
on.
like those kinds of things. If you look at my paintings, I actually go to a lot of effort to hide the paint strokes. So my
Mm,
paintings kind of look digital, and I've had people tell me that they think my paintings are digital, and I'm like, oh, that's a huge compliment because it means that I have done what I'm trying to do. But in children's books, I'm trying to do the opposite, which is like add more texture, more layers,
interesting.
paint drips and things like that I would immediately remove from a painting. So anyway, again, it's like it has informed my sensibilities in a lot of ways. And now when I go to paint, I've kind of forgotten how to paint in the way that I used to. And I'm trying to like figure out how I paint now, based on what I've learned through digital, and like essentially being looser in my styles. And so it's been fun because each of these mediums has really like transformed my technique and also my technical skills. So I've become a different artist in many ways since becoming a digital artist, and how it's sort of impacted all of my work elsewhere.
Ah, that's so interesting. Well, so now to add another layer to it, now you're, as I mentioned, most people know you for your illustration work, and now this is your first time writing the book as well. Did that affect how you did the illustrations, or what was that process like for you? Were you surprised at what it was like to actually write the book now since you've been working with these other authors?
Oh my gosh, yes. For me, I'm sorry about the sun here. I'm trying to like block it out. I actually am a writer, but I have a background in like technical writing. And so I wrote for like a sorry, I should say technology company for about a decade. And so I wrote about AI technology and drones and software. And so I come from a very like analytical background of writing, and having to take what I do in that realm and transfer it into children's writing was actually, it's kind of a challenge at first. Like my agent was like, basically my agent was like, this work that you do in your adult illustrations about You Are the Land, because that's sort of where this came from, was my adult work. She was like, this is a message that children need. And so I had to take that information and figure out what that meant. And that's sort of how the book came about, was her being like, how do you make this for accessible for a younger audience? And so it meant, one, challenging myself illustration wise to translate these ideas to young people, but then also to take my writing approach and adjust it. And so I really approach children's books almost like writing a poem, as opposed to the work that I have done much of my life in technology and also in art criticism, which is much more structured and analytical. And like my agent would tell me that I write in a didactic way, which is not for like children's books should not be written in a didactic
Right.
way, you know? And so it needs to, what she says, she's always like, instead of telling me, show me through your writing. And so that
Mm,
is still something that I'm challenged by, and something that like I don't really know if I'm very good at yet, but I'm still trying, because I have so many stories that I want to share with people from our
mm,
community. And and these ideas that I have in my head, I just have to haven't I'm just now starting to explore this format of, children's books as a writer. And so I have like, essentially I'm working on my 10th book right now, but this is
wow.
my first that I got to write and illustrate. So it allowed me to really like show the full set of my skills that I bring to the table as a creative, which is really, really neat.
Well, I hope you do because I mean, obviously the illustrations are gorgeous, but the text is really wonderful too. I mean, it's just such an interesting concept about, you know, teaching kids to think of themselves. I mean, the way that you show the interconnectedness with nature is to kind of look and see qualities in nature that you can be like how you can be strong or I'm trying to see the mother is gentle like a warm spring day. I mean, all of these are such vivid images, and I think, like you say, it really does show how children, and even just how you work it into the artwork about how she has the trees, and there's one about it coming out of the fingers. See if I can find it really quickly.
Oh, the title page, yes.
Yes, that's one of my favorites. I love that. So you dedicate the book, which I thought was interesting, to your grandmother and to the Confederated Tribes of the, am I saying this right? Grand Round?
Grand Round or Grand Ronde, yes.
You say for teaching you about your own connection to the land. So why was this something that you really wanted to teach kids about? Why is it so important?
So, as someone who makes this work about being connected to the land, and has made it for many years before this book ever sort of came into being, I have had people outside of Indigenous culture really like look to me for guidance about
Mm,
feeling this connection. And so what I realize is that in American culture, in non-native culture, there isn't a lot of framework for people to express that feeling that we
mm,
feel in nature. And
mm,
I'm just very lucky that I come from a culture that teaches me that I'm part of the land, and that the land is an extension of myself, and vice versa. And
mm,
so people, I think, need language to explain these things
mm,
in order to strengthen their connection to the land. And so I really am offering this as like a framework for people who don't come from my culture.
mm,
I'm just, like I said, very lucky that my culture teaches me these things, but it's true for all human beings. We are all an extension of the earth. And so it's hopefully like a doorway for people. And I sort of say that at the end of my note, which is like,
right,
I come from a culture that values what's called placekeeping. That's what we call it. So I'm a placekeeper, no matter if I'm on my homelands, if I'm here in Oregon, I'm, responsible for looking after the earth. I'm also responsible for the earth when I am out in the world,
mhm,
traveling to promote my books or whatever,
right,
that no matter where I am in the world, I'm a placekeeper, and that I make sure that I honor the earth wherever I am, and take care of it and be a good steward of it and respect it, right? And so those values are something that all human beings can have, and I think that once you sort of have those beings at the core of who you are, a lot of things change. And I think that, when we look at what the future of children who might read this book are looking towards, it's
mhm,
actually very scary. And these young people that are reading this book now are going to be responsible for problem solving the things that we have done and our
mhm.
predecessors have done, or neglected to do, in order to resolve the climate crisis. And so young people, if they want to heal that, they need to know that they're a part of the land that we're neglecting, essentially, we're actively sort of abusing. And so, in order to heal those things, there's something much sort of like at the foundation that must be healed first. And that's the idea that, look, if you abuse the land, you're essentially abusing yourself, you're abusing your family, you're abusing your community. So you really need to think about how you treat the land is actually a reflection of probably how you treat everything in your world. And so honoring the earth, which is a sort of passive recipient of poor treatment by our culture, that doesn't have to be that way, and there are ways in which to be in harmony with the world as opposed to being in disharmony. And so I think a lot of people are thinking about this right now, both in, in my generation, but also, people who are very young and that are coming up in a world that clearly does not have any plan for this. Right. And it's like our current administration is talking about coal right now, and just thinking about how extractive and damaging that is to the environment and the people who have to work in that industry. Like, mining people have horrible rates of death and sickness from those jobs. And so they're not great jobs. And so all of it doesn't make sense. We're going backwards when a lot of the rest of the world is moving forward with things that are more beneficial for the earth in terms of the way that we extract resources from it. And so there's opportunity for transformation. And I feel like that starts somewhere much farther back than, oh, we need to fix the climate. It's like, well, there are values embedded in our community and our culture that have brought us to this point. And if we don't address those directly, then we're never going to really fix it, Sorry, that was a very long rant, but that's
that's it. It's so interesting because I think you're right. I mean, like you said, a lot of times we have like kind of surface solutions or people trying to fix one aspect of, but they're not getting at the core of the problem, like you said, were these essential values. And so a book like yours is so important in spreading really Indigenous cultural values to non-Indigenous kids. But I'm also curious, what do you think this book means to Indigenous kids to read this and be like, oh yeah, that's that kid that looks like me, that looks like my grandma or grandpa, or that looks like how I was raised. What do you think? Why is it so important for them also?
Growing up as an Indigenous person in Oregon, which has a very specific history of erasure, you have the Oregon Trail, and sort of Manifest Destiny is a very strong mythos here and remains a very sort of important part of the state's identity. And it's like, I grew up in a state that erased my culture's history, and I grew up in a school system that told me my own tribes were extinct. And so there wasn't representation of my community or my culture or the values that come from my culture. The most I had was Pocahontas, which is a horrific representation of our community. And so it's my responsibility as an artist, now that I'm in the world and have these abilities and giving opportunities to help fill that gap, that's what I should be doing with my skills. Like I said, I'm a political artist, and politics or the idea of activism is rooted in everything I do. So this is just an extension of that activism, right? That we deserve to be represented, and our community has been erased in so many ways that giving us that representation is really important, because young Indigenous people deserve to see themselves represented in the world, deserve to see their culture and community values represented in a positive way, not always in a historical pain trauma way, but in positive and uplifting ways. And then also, for those people who are not from our community but really need to understand their own connections. And so I feel like there's so many overlaps. And I actually just had someone who is an adult read it, and she has like a PhD and is a very intense Indigenous person, but she sent me a message and said, I cried when I read this, and I thought, as a little res kid, this book would have meant so much to me. And so that is precisely the feedback that I'm looking for, and that even grown kids see themselves in the book and see their younger self, because that's really, this book is about healing my younger self in many ways, and like giving my younger self the representation she so desperately needed. And so yeah, it means a lot, because I think that it's not only going to impact young people, but it will impact us elders who are reading those books to the young people.
So beautiful. And so tell us, we just have a few minutes left of what else are you working on? I mean, you mentioned that did you say you're working on your 10th book? Do you also, do you have plans to write some more? I think you mentioned you had a lot of other ideas. Is there anything you can tell us about if with either of those kind of
Yeah.
streams?
So I'm working on a book right now that is about it's called The Longest Walk, which is about, the history of the, sort of forced removal of our people. And so, and that happened across the country to tribes all over Turtle Island. And so this is another lost story that's been erased. And it's not something that I wrote, but it's, again, like, I'm getting to serve this higher purpose with my work, which is to help Native authors and storytellers tell their stories. And so that's like a whole nother component of this that's so special, that I get to be in collaboration with other Indigenous people and help them bring their stories to life. Like, one of the greatest honors of my life in general. So that's super cool. And then I'm working on a new manuscript right now that is about the sort of hidden history of dance within Indigenous community. A lot of people are familiar with the powwow, but a lot of people don't understand why the powwow exists, and sort of the historical discrimination that came before the powwow. And so it's like a sort of contextualizing the powwow in a way that I really haven't seen any Indigenous books do yet. And so I'm really interested in the idea of writing books for kids that um not only like affirm Indigenous history, but also, or Indigenous like identity, but like maybe help people who are non-native learn more about us, and in ways that sometimes will challenge what they might know or think about us. But that these things that I see as a person who has to educate non-native people about our history, or I shouldn't say has to, but chooses to, and like engages in the act of teaching people about the history of my tribe, the history of Oregon pre-colonization, things like that, that there's something really powerful in that, and that these stories need to be told so that we don't harm people like this in the future. It's like we're in a very trepidatious place in our country, and a lot of people are being harmed in ways that seem very similar to the history that we have already enacted in this country. So I'm really just hoping that my work can alleviate something of those, of that, and that comes in so many different ways. So anyway, I'm working on all kinds of stuff. I got public art stuff that's totally not related to children's books happening, and all kinds of really cool things that I'm just like, I'm a workaholic, so I'm just always doing something.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait to see what you do next. I mean, I love your children's books, and I wasn't familiar with your art for adults. So, anybody, if you are coming at this like I was, like from children's literature, you need to go check out our other artwork as well. And I can't wait to see your other books coming out. Again, we've been talking about You Are the Land. If you haven't entered the giveaway, it ends tonight. So, make sure you enter, because it's a really amazing book. Thank you so much for talking. It was so fun to get to talk with you and hear. It's just so fascinating to me. And I'm very excited that took the time to talk with us today.
Likewise, thank you so much for the opportunity to chat with you. It was my pleasure.
And thanks to all of you for watching. As I mentioned, this will all be up on Instagram, and then later we'll have it on our YouTube channel as well. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.